Most men talk too much because they are terrified of silence. Silence forces a human being into confrontation with himself. No distractions, no performance, no audience, just the unbearable weight of his own thoughts echoing back at him in the dark. That is why so many people fill every second with noise. Music, arguments, social media posts, endless explanations, endless attempts to prove something to strangers who are too consumed by their own suffering to truly care. But the powerful man, the truly dangerous man, learns to sit in silence without flinching. There is something deeply unsettling about a man who no longer needs validation, a man who does not rush to defend himself against every insult, a man who does not announce every plan before it is built, a man who walks into a room and observes more than he speaks. Most people mistake loudness for strength because they have never encountered real inner discipline. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." That line alone destroys half the noise modern people build their identities around. We live in a world addicted to emotional leakage. People broadcast every emotion the second they feel it. Anger becomes a post, sadness becomes a performance, envy becomes passive aggression, loneliness becomes desperation disguised as confidence. But the disciplined mind understands something terrifyingly important. Every uncontrolled emotion is a form of self-betrayal. Every emotional outburst hands your inner world over to external circumstances. And once the world can control your emotions, it can control you. So we begin to understand why silence matters. Silence is not weakness, it is containment, it is mastery over impulse. It is the ability to feel chaos rising within the soul and still remain composed while lesser minds collapse into reaction. Epictetus taught that no man is free if he is not master of himself. Most people hear those words and think about motivation, but this goes far deeper than motivation. This is war against the undisciplined self. Because every morning we wake up with two versions of ourselves battling for control. One seeks comfort, emotional indulgence, revenge, attention, pleasure, distraction. The other seeks clarity, discipline, restraint, purpose. And the terrifying reality is that whichever version we feed becomes stronger, day after day, year after year, until eventually we either become sovereign over ourselves or slaves to every emotion that enters the mind. The silent man understands this battle intimately. He has suffered enough to realize that not every thought deserves expression. Not every feeling deserves obedience. Not every conflict deserves his energy. There is power in withholding reaction. There is power in remaining calm while others desperately attempt to provoke you. And there is immense power in becoming emotionally unshakable in a world designed to keep human beings reactive, impulsive, addicted, and weak. The first thing we learn is to stop explaining ourselves to everyone. Most people constantly narrate their lives because they are seeking permission to exist. They explain their goals before achieving them. They explain their boundaries because they fear rejection. They explain their worth because they secretly doubt it themselves. But over time, we begin to realize something painful. Excessive explanation is often rooted in insecurity. The more desperate we are to be understood by everyone, the more disconnected we become from our own center. A disciplined mind learns restraint, not because it hates people, but because it understands human nature. Seneca warned that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. And much of that suffering comes from obsessing over how we are perceived. We replay conversations in our minds. We rehearse defenses against criticisms that may never even arrive. We become exhausted trying to manage the opinions of people who are themselves lost and confused. The powerful man moves differently. He allows results to speak before words ever do. He does not announce every ambition because he understands that speaking too soon creates an illusion of accomplishment. Many men talk themselves out of greatness by satisfying their ego with premature recognition. They receive applause for intentions instead of discipline for execution. And slowly their hunger dies before the work has even begun. So we learn to build quietly, to suffer quietly, to improve quietly. There is a sacred loneliness in this process. The world may misunderstand us during this phase. Some may think we are distant, others may think we are failing because they cannot see the internal transformation taking place. But all meaningful growth happens invisibly before it becomes visible. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself constantly that the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. So, each day, we become more protective of what enters the mind. Less gossip, less outrage, less emotional poison disguised as entertainment. We begin guarding the inner world because we finally understand that inner chaos eventually becomes outer destruction. And eventually something changes within us. We stop feeling the need to win every argument. We stop chasing validation from emotionally unstable people. We stop interrupting our peace just to prove a point. Silence becomes less uncomfortable. In fact, it becomes armor. The second thing we learn is to control anger before it controls us. Anger feels powerful in the moment. That is why so many people become addicted to it. It creates the illusion of certainty. It floods the body with energy. It temporarily masks fear, sadness, humiliation, and insecurity. But anger is one of the most dangerous masters a human being can serve because it destroys judgment precisely when judgment is needed most. Seneca wrote an entire work called On Anger, describing anger as temporary madness. And when we honestly examine our lives, we see how true this is. How many lives have been destroyed because someone could not pause for a single moment before reacting? How many relationships collapsed because pride demanded emotional retaliation? How many opportunities vanished because a person chose ego over composure? The silent man understands that emotional control is not suppression. Suppression buries emotions alive where they rot beneath the surface. Mastery is different. Mastery means observing emotion without becoming possessed by it. It means feeling rage rise within the chest and still choosing discipline over destruction. That is not weakness. That is one of the rarest forms of strength on earth. Most people become whatever emotion enters them. If insulted, they become anger. If rejected, they become despair. If praised, they become arrogance. Their identity shifts constantly because they lack inner foundation. But through discipline, we begin separating ourselves from temporary emotional states. We start realizing that thoughts and feelings are visitors, not rulers. Epictetus taught that it is not events themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about them. This realization changes everything. Suddenly, we stop seeing ourselves as victims of circumstance. We recognize that much of our suffering comes from interpretation. Two men can endure the same hardship while one collapses and the other becomes stronger. The difference lies within the mind. So each morning we train ourselves to pause before reacting. We breathe before speaking. We detach before responding. And over time, people begin noticing something unusual about us. Chaos no longer easily penetrates our composure. Insults lose power. Provocations lose effectiveness. We stop being emotionally available to manipulation. The third thing we learn is the discipline of observation. Most people enter every room trying to be noticed, but the powerful man enters seeking understanding. He watches. He listens. He studies patterns. Human beings reveal themselves constantly through behavior, tone, posture, envy, insecurity, impulsiveness, arrogance. But few notice because few are truly paying attention. Modern life has destroyed observation. Attention spans have been shattered by constant stimulation. People cannot sit quietly for 5 minutes without reaching for distraction. And because of this, they miss the deeper truths hidden beneath surface appearances. They hear words but miss intentions. They see smiles but miss resentment. They mistake noise for wisdom. But when we become comfortable with silence, perception sharpens. We begin seeing how desperately many people are trying to convince the world they are important. We see how fear disguises itself as aggression, how insecurity disguises itself as arrogance, how wounded people attempt to wound others so they do not suffer alone. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself to view human beings with understanding instead of hatred. Not because cruelty should be excused, but because ignorance itself is a form of suffering. People consumed by greed, envy, vanity, and rage are already imprisoned internally. Their punishment is built into their own character. This changes how we move through the world. We stop taking everything personally. We stop reacting emotionally to every rude encounter because we recognize that many people are fighting invisible wars within themselves. Some are drowning in regret, others in bitterness, others in self-hatred. And without discipline, pain spreads from one person to another endlessly. So the silent man observes before he speaks. He studies before he judges. And because of this, his words begin carrying greater weight. When he finally does speak, people listen. Not because he demands attention, but because restraint gives his voice substance. The fourth thing we learn is to become independent from external validation. This may be one of the hardest battles of all. Human beings crave recognition deeply. We want to be admired, understood, desired, respected. And there is nothing inherently wrong with this. But when our emotional stability becomes dependent upon external approval, we become psychologically fragile. We hand strangers the authority to determine our self-worth. Social media has intensified this sickness beyond anything previous generations could have imagined. Entire identities are now built upon visibility. People measure value through attention. Silence terrifies them because silence feels like invisibility. And invisibility feels like death to the ego. But the disciplined soul eventually realizes that chasing validation is endless hunger. No amount of praise permanently satisfies insecurity. The crowd is fickle. One moment it worships, the next it condemns. If our peace depends on applause, then our peace can always be taken away. Epictetus warned against becoming attached to things outside our control. Reputation is one of those things. We cannot fully control how others perceive us. People project their fears, envies, and assumptions onto everyone around them. Trying to control all perception is psychological slavery. So we begin anchoring ourselves internally instead. We learn to respect ourselves through discipline rather than applause, through integrity rather than image, through quiet consistency rather than performance. This creates a stability that external circumstances cannot easily destroy. And once this happens, something powerful emerges. We stop negotiating our values for acceptance. We stop shrinking ourselves to fit weak environments. We stop panicking when misunderstood. The world loses one of its greatest weapons against us, the fear of disapproval. The fifth thing we learn is that suffering can either sharpen us or destroy us. Pain is unavoidable. Betrayal will come. Failure will come. Loss will come. Aging will come. Death itself waits patiently for every human being who walks this earth. The question is never whether suffering will arrive. The question is what suffering will transform us into. Weak men become bitter through suffering. They turn cynical, cruel, self-destructive. They allow pain to poison their spirit until eventually they begin spreading their misery to others. But disciplined men use suffering differently. They allow it to strip illusion away. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." That line contains an entire philosophy of resilience. Hardship is not always an interruption of the path. Often hardship is the path itself. So instead of asking why suffering exists, we begin asking what suffering is trying to teach us. Patience, detachment, humility, endurance, gratitude, emotional control. Pain becomes training rather than meaningless punishment. This does not mean we become emotionless machines. Quite the opposite. We feel deeply. But we stop worshiping comfort above growth. We stop expecting life to remain easy. And because of this, adversity no longer shocks us the way it shocks others. The silent man carries scars the world will never fully see. But instead of using suffering as an excuse for weakness, he uses it as fuel for transformation. Quietly, patiently, relentlessly. There is an old story about Epictetus that reveals more strength than most modern displays of masculinity ever will. Before he became a teacher, he was born a slave. One day his master twisted his leg violently while mocking him. Epictetus calmly warned him, "If you continue, you will break it." The man kept twisting until the leg finally snapped. And according to the story, Epictetus simply looked at him and said, "Did I not tell you it would break?" No screaming, no begging, no theatrical rage, just acceptance of reality as it unfolded before him. Most people hear that story and think it is about pain tolerance. It is not. It is about a man refusing to surrender his inner world to external cruelty. That level of discipline terrifies people because it exposes how emotionally dependent most human beings truly are. We are taught to believe power means domination over others. Louder voice, bigger ego, sharper insults. But the ancient mind understood something modern culture has forgotten. The highest form of power is self-command. A man who cannot govern his impulses becomes dangerous even to himself. He destroys relationships out of anger. He sabotages opportunities out of pride. He wastes years chasing temporary pleasure while neglecting his character, and eventually his own undisciplined mind becomes the prison he cannot escape. Marcus Aurelius understood this intimately while ruling an empire drowning in war, betrayal, plague, and political corruption. Imagine waking up every morning knowing thousands depended on your decisions while enemies waited for signs of weakness. Yet in his private writings, he rarely obsessed over conquering others. Instead, he constantly reminded himself to conquer impatience, vanity, resentment, and ego. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. That sentence alone could transform a human life if fully understood. Because most suffering comes from demanding control over things we were never meant to control. We want people to act according to our expectations. We want life to unfold according to our plans. We want loyalty without betrayal, success without failure, health without aging. But reality refuses to obey human desire. And when reality collides with ego, weak minds collapse into bitterness. There is another story involving a Roman statesman who was publicly insulted during a banquet. The room became silent, waiting for retaliation. Pride demanded humiliation in return. Status demanded dominance. But instead of reacting emotionally, the man simply continued eating as though nothing had happened. Later, someone asked why he tolerated such disrespect. He answered calmly, "Because I refuse to become a slave to another man's tongue." That is a terrifying level of freedom. Imagine existing in a state where another person can no longer bait you into self-destruction. Most people are controlled through emotional manipulation because they never learned stillness. A single insult can ruin their entire day. A single rejection can unravel their confidence. A single inconvenience can transform them into chaos. But when we train ourselves to pause before reacting, we begin reclaiming ownership over the mind, and slowly, the world loses its grip on us. Seneca himself lived through extraordinary contradictions. He possessed wealth, influence, and status, yet constantly wrote about the emptiness of luxury without discipline. He warned that comfort easily weakens the spirit when a person becomes dependent upon it. That is why he intentionally practiced discomfort at times, wearing rough clothing, eating plain food, sleeping without excess, so he would never become psychologically fragile. Imagine how different modern people would be if they occasionally denied themselves comfort instead of obeying every craving instantly. We live in a time where people panic over boredom because they have lost intimacy with their own thoughts. Silence feels unbearable to them. Stillness feels threatening. The moment discomfort arises, distraction arrives immediately. Phone screens, endless scrolling, entertainment layered on top of entertainment, but beneath all the noise remains the same unresolved mind waiting patiently in the dark. And eventually, every human being must face himself without distraction. There is a reason ancient philosophers spent so much time alone. Solitude reveals truth. In silence, excuses lose their power. We begin seeing how often we betray our own standards, how often we choose temporary comfort over long-term purpose, how often fear disguises itself as procrastination. And at first this realization hurts, but pain that leads to awareness is far more valuable than pleasure that keeps us unconscious. One of the most haunting examples of composure comes from Admiral James Stockdale, a modern man deeply influenced by these teachings while imprisoned during the Vietnam War. Tortured repeatedly for years, isolated from certainty, stripped of comfort, he later explained that survival depended upon maintaining control over his perception. He refused to become mentally enslaved by circumstances. While others psychologically collapsed from false expectations, he learned to confront brutal reality without surrendering hope. That combination, acceptance without defeat, is extraordinarily rare, and that is what we begin practicing every morning. Not fake positivity, not delusional optimism, but disciplined perception. We stop asking life to become easier and begin asking ourselves to become stronger. We stop seeing hardship as proof that life is unfair and begin seeing it as resistance training for the soul. The fire was never there to destroy us. The fire reveals what we are made of. There is also the story of Cato the Younger, a man so committed to principle that even his enemies respected him. Rome around him became increasingly corrupt, full of manipulation and political performance. Men sold their integrity for power and comfort, but Cato refused compromise even when it isolated him. People mocked him for his severity. Others considered him rigid, yet history remembers him precisely because he would not betray himself to gain approval. That lesson matters now more than ever. Modern society constantly pressures people to dilute themselves for acceptance. Say what is popular, follow what is trending, suppress convictions to avoid criticism. But every time we abandon our principles to gain approval, something inside us weakens. Self-respect begins eroding quietly, and eventually we wake up feeling disconnected from ourselves without understanding why. The silent man guards against this decay carefully. He understands that discipline is not built through dramatic moments alone, but through tiny daily decisions nobody applauds. Waking up when the body wants more sleep. Remaining calm when anger begs for release. Staying honest when lies would be easier. Continuing forward when motivation disappears. Character is built in silence, long before the world ever notices results. Marcus Aurelius wrote many of his reflections while surrounded by military conflict near the end of his life. Imagine that. An emperor with absolute authority, still reminding himself not to become consumed by ego, anger, or despair. That alone destroys the excuse that circumstances prevent discipline. The battle has always been internal first, always, and perhaps that is why the most powerful men stay silent, not because they have nothing to say, but because they understand the weight words should carry. They know that constant noise weakens meaning. They know emotional reactions often create regret. They know discipline grows stronger in stillness. And most importantly, they know the greatest war a human being will ever fight is not against the world, but against the undisciplined chaos within himself. Leonidas understood something most men spend their entire lives avoiding. Death is not the greatest enemy. Fear is. Fear is what breaks discipline. Fear is what makes men betray principles. Fear is what causes people to abandon honor for comfort, truth for safety, purpose for survival. And when we study the mindset behind Sparta, not the fantasy version but the mentality itself, we begin to understand why silence became such a powerful force among warriors who expected suffering as part of existence. The Spartans trained boys from childhood to endure discomfort without complaint. Cold, hunger, exhaustion, pain. Not because suffering itself was glorious, but because dependency creates weakness. A man who cannot function without comfort becomes easy to control. A man who collapses emotionally under hardship becomes unreliable the moment life turns dark. So they trained the nervous system itself. They trained the mind to remain composed while the body screamed for relief. And Leonidas embodied that mentality long before Thermopylae ever happened. People focus on the battle itself because it is dramatic, but the true story is psychological. Imagine fully understanding that you are marching toward overwhelming odds. Imagine knowing there is a strong possibility you will never return home. Most people today cannot handle uncertainty over a text message, let alone march knowingly toward death. Yet Leonidas moved forward calmly because his mind had already accepted what weaker minds spend their lives running from. That acceptance created a terrifying form of freedom. Once a man stops worshiping survival above virtue, he becomes difficult to intimidate. This is why powerful empires feared disciplined warriors more than larger armies. Xerxes possessed unimaginable numbers, wealth, and military force, yet still demanded submission from Sparta before battle even began. Why? Because even tyrants understand that men who no longer fear death cannot easily be controlled. There is a famous moment before the battle where Persian forces warned the Spartans that their arrows would blot out the sun. One Spartan reportedly responded, "Then we will fight in the shade." Most modern people hear that line and think it was merely confidence. It was deeper than confidence. It was detachment from panic. It was emotional control in the face of overwhelming reality. The disciplined mind refuses to emotionally collapse before circumstances fully arrive. That is one of the greatest lessons we can learn from these ancient warriors. Most suffering occurs before the event itself. The imagination tortures us long before reality does. Seneca warned constantly about this tendency. We create disasters in the mind and then emotionally experience them repeatedly before anything has even happened. Fear drains life from the spirit, before life has even tested us. But Leonidas understood preparation over panic. The Spartans trained relentlessly because discipline reduces fear. Weakness breeds anxiety because the mind knows it is unprepared. This is true physically, emotionally, financially, spiritually, everywhere. A neglected mind becomes unstable under pressure. A neglected body becomes fragile. A neglected character crumbles the moment temptation appears. So the Spartan mentality was not about appearing fearless. It was about becoming difficult to break. And perhaps that is why they spoke so little. Constant talking leaks energy. Constant emotional expression weakens focus. The Spartans became legendary partly because of their restraint. Few words, precise actions, no unnecessary emotional performance. Modern culture encourages endless self-expression, but ancient disciplined cultures understood that restraint sharpens the soul. There is another story about Leonidas meeting Xerxes before battle. Xerxes supposedly demanded the Spartans lay down their weapons. Leonidas answered simply, "Come and take them." No speech, no emotional rant, no desperate explanation, just clarity. Conviction condensed into a single sentence. That is the effect silence has on language. When a man speaks less, his words carry more force. Most people today weaken their own voice through excess. Endless opinions. Endless explanations, endless emotional reactions. Words lose weight when they are constantly thrown around carelessly. But disciplined men understand timing. They observe first. They think first. And when they finally speak, people feel the gravity behind the words, because silence has given those words density. The Spartans also understood brotherhood in a way modern society rarely does anymore. They trained together, suffered together, bled together. Hardship forged unity. Today, many people are surrounded by others yet remain spiritually isolated because modern relationships are often built upon convenience rather than shared discipline. But deep trust only emerges through adversity endured together. At Thermopylae, those men stood knowing many would die beside one another, yet they remained. That level of loyalty cannot be manufactured through comfort. It is forged through sacrifice, through shared suffering, through mutual discipline. And perhaps this is another reason the silent man becomes powerful, because he stops seeking shallow connection and begins valuing depth instead. Marcus Aurelius later echoed a similar mentality when he wrote, "What injures the hive injures the bee." Ancient disciplined cultures understood that self-mastery was not merely personal. A weak man harms everyone around him eventually. His impulsiveness spreads chaos into relationships, communities, families, nations. But disciplined men stabilize environments through composure, reliability, and restraint. Leonidas also understood that courage is not loud. Hollywood often portrays bravery as screaming defiance into battle. But real courage is usually quieter than that. Real courage is controlled breathing while fear pounds inside the chest. Real courage is maintaining discipline while uncertainty surrounds you. Real courage is moving forward despite fully understanding the risks. That is why the image of the Spartan still resonates thousands of years later. Not because people secretly crave violence, but because people crave inner strength. They crave sovereignty over themselves. Deep down, many modern men feel spiritually weak because comfort has replaced discipline and distraction has replaced reflection. They sense something ancient has been lost. And maybe what has been lost is precisely this: the ability to remain composed in darkness, the ability to endure hardship without theatrical collapse, the ability to suffer without becoming bitter, the ability to face uncertainty without surrendering dignity. Leonidas became symbolic not merely because he fought, but because he represented disciplined resistance against fear itself. So when we think about the silent man, we should not picture passivity. We should picture controlled intensity. Like a Spartan shield wall before battle, still, composed, unreadable, disciplined. No wasted movement, no emotional leakage. Only focus, only purpose, only mastery over the chaos within.